Hey, welcome back to another edition of In the Chute. I'm Brandon, and my son Calen is in that little box. How'd you get in there? Yeah, there you go. What do you got for us today, Calen?
All right, so we specialize in gated horses, whereas most of the world actually doesn't have gated horses, or they choose to ignore that they have gated horses for whatever reason. I'm not quite sure, but anyway, uh, there's often a feeling for those who are not familiar with the gated horse breeds when they get on their back for the first time and they start to ride them, that there's a taking off feeling. What is that feeling? Where does it come from? And why are they feeling it?
Speed, baby. It's speed. Because they've never felt a non-gated horse move out that fast at a walk. And everybody wants their horse to walk fast. It just amazes me that more people don't ride gated horses. This country was settled with gated horses.
Yeah, that's why I made
And
my comment earlier. It amazes me that there's so many people they're literally against it. And I don't know, maybe that comes from, the Tennessee Walking Horse Association where, we've talked about before, soaring and
right,
the stuff they've done for those animals. So there's like a human rights thing that's kind of a connotation with it, maybe. But
right.
yeah, I'm not sure why people are so anti-gated horse. Like you've talked about before. Paul Revere rode his midnight ride on a gated horse, and it's
Yep.
General Robert E. Lee. His horse was also a gated horse. It's just
Traveler was a gated horse.
go down
Hey,
that
one of the
line.
most, if you want to talk to people that are my age anyway, what is one of the most famous TV horses?
It's Trigger, Roy
What
Rogers.
was he?
Trigger.
Trigger one and Trigger two were both Tennessee walking horses.
Yep.
They're
Yep.
gated horses. So, um, yeah, it's very similar. If you want to take it to gender, how many people that you know go, I would never ride a mare? They, yeah,
All the time. Yeah.
all the time. Why is that? Is the mare any worse?
No, it's like a mule. You got to get in its head and get it to trust you a little bit more. But once it trusts you, you're good to go.
Right. Well, and that's it.
Yeah.
I think they don't have the skill to handle a mare.
Yeah.
So, because they just want to sit on them and go. And it's like, a mare takes some work. A mare will outperform a gelding. Oh my God. I'll bet 99, 95 to 99% of the time, a mare will outperform a gelding. I
Yeah.
mean, it is not even funny how much more, especially if they bond with you. Those mares will kill themselves trying to please you. Where a gelding's like, nah, I got nothing to live for. I'll do what I got. Yeah, you make me do it, but
Especially
okay.
going up that mountain.
Right, right. Where I think it's the same way with the gated horse versus non-gated horse. It takes a little bit more. Uh, how would he put that? Skilled is one way, maybe, but not necessarily. Because I know some really good riders that ride non-gated horses, but they don't have I guess maybe the tools of how to present their body and how to work their own body with that horse's body to get the best gait out of them. And so if you don't understand how something is and you don't want to work at it, then you just say, they're no good. I'm not going to do that. You kind of why people don't ride a mare or
Right.
don't want or denigrate a mare. And I'll tell you what, a mare's a fine ride. I'll take a mare over gelding, given a choice every time. But I think it's the same way with that. They don't necessarily understand the breed, don't understand gait, and everybody has their preference on breeds. I mean, we train God anything. I mean, we're not breed specific for trainings, but we do specialize in what we raise and train, and what I teach clinics of all kinds of horses. But again, there's not a lot of people that specialize in gated horses, especially the way we do with a loose rein, like a ranch horse, a gated ranch horse. And a lot of people are riding gated horses, but they're doing it inside of an arena for a show. That's not what we do. And our application is very, very narrow. So, um, I've been on a lot of rides, a lot of guys that bragging about how fast their horse can walk. And I'm just at a dog walk on ours.
Yeah.
And then you take off and, you just leave them in the dust and you're still at a walk. And, they don't care that so much.
So I guess to circle back, uh, what what's that taking off feeling, and where does it come from?
I think it's a expectation of not of moving just a little bit faster, not really moving out. And I think that's where that feeling of taking off is, that they're moving out. These horses are going the average saddle horse at about 3 mile an hour, maybe 3.5 mile an hour, and you can make this horse do 6.5, 7, 8 mile an hour. You're better than double, almost tripling the speed at a walk. That is a significant change in speed, and
And
especially
they're
right off.
and they're still not trotting or running at that point
No,
either. They're
no,
still at
they're
a leisure pace for them.
right. Yep. And the very fastest horse I had at a perfect walk, I could go faster on him, certainly with a very imperfect walk, but it was still a 4B gait. Was a horse I had at 10.0 mile an hour on a GPS at a perfect gait. That is smoking. Now I've had some other horses that are trained that were gated, like a Peruvian Paso. She was she could do the sobriandando is what they call it, which is what we call a stepping pace. Same footfall sequence, and she was doing almost 15 mile an hour. But yeah, she was smoking. I mean, smoking. That's what a slow lope is for a lot of horses. But again, it's a very fast stepping pace, and she's not going to do that all day. But she could freaking move. It was impressive, and I mean, it surprised me how fast she could go. And I'm used to, fast walking gated horses. But I think that's the thing of it. That feeling of, oh my God, all of a sudden you're just not ready for it. And you're kind of, the horse is taking off out from under you. And we've had some people come out and ride and wanted always heard of a gated horse, really wanted to get on one, was considering getting from themselves, and it scared them. And all the horse is doing is walking. It's like they're not running away from you, or
Yeah.
they're not dangerous at all. I mean, you are not ready for, or your expectation was a whole lot different than what you're experiencing. So it was it's been different, but hey, it's all right.
Yeah, that I brought it up. It actually like piqued my interest for us talking about it tonight because when when we went over to the Dunrovin Ranch last week, they asked me to ride drag for one of their riding
Oh, the client
groups,
rides, yeah.
and the people were there. They pay to come ride these horses, and all the horses are gated as far as I know. I don't know if
Yep.
she has any non-gated horses
Only
other
those little
than the
ponies and the
ponies.
donkeys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they were those people were on the horses, and they were some I think were somewhat experienced with horses, but others were not. And then the fact that all of them were clearly inexperienced with, I think, gated horses
Yeah.
was interesting to me because they were all kind of like holding on tight to the reins real quick because they thought the animals were going to take off. And the way their wrangler kind of took off when they wanted to do a faster a walk, they did kind of end up going into like a stepping pace or a foxtrot, but it was still I thought it was interesting and something to kind of talk about because there's not a lot of people that understand with gated horses. There's something between a walk and a trot, and there's a lot of those
Right.
somethings.
Well, and there's something between a walk up to a trot and then beyond a trot that's a little different, but it's still a trot is an intermediate gait. And these horses have all kinds of intermediate gaits, stepping
Right.
pace, running walk, your trot. They can trot, but you don't want them to because it's a suspended gait, which is rough. And they foxtrot, so there's a lot of different gaits in there that are still intermediate gaits. But it's interesting your what you said about some people had some experience with horses, but just not gated experience. I know people that have ridden their entire lives and are pretty accomplished riders and don't know the first thing about how to make a gated horse move correctly or make them stay in gait, whatever gait that they're conformed for. And I think there's a lot of ego to that as well. I mean, you know how egotistical horse people are.
Yeah,
They're
we'll
some of
talk
the
about that
worst.
one day.
Yeah, that's a good one to cover. But nobody wants to admit if they've been on a horse for 4 or 5 decades that they don't know something about them because they're supposed to know everything. And I think they shy away from them. Like, I wouldn't have anything to do with them because again, they don't know anything about it. They don't want to admit that there's something that they can learn. Interestingly enough, you have some people who've given up riding horses because their back killed them, and then they decide, hey, I want to get back into horses, but I need something my back isn't going to hurt. There's a gated horse.
Well, with that, I think we'll put it out to pasture.